Hi there. Hi. Right, we'll kick off if that's all right with everybody. If you want to keep yourselves muted, then please do. But if you want to jump in with a question, that's fine. We'll get to points for that. So good morning, Mit and Dafavonen. Thank you for attending the first virtual Cornish Music Symposium. This is the first time the event's gone online, so thanks for making the leap. We really appreciate you joining us on Sunday morning and hope you have all been enjoying the festival events at Lowender Peran so far. This is new for us too, so if you please bear with us in case we have any technical issues, and let me know if I'm speaking too fast or if you can't hear what we're saying. The symposium this morning is going to be a series of short talks from myself, Jane, Lofthouse, Merv, Davey, Tony Mansell and Garry Tregidga about the Cornish National Music Archive, what it is, what it hopes to do, and some of the projects we've been working on so far. So just to run through what it is, Jane's going to introduce the Cornish Music Guild, which underpins the work of the archive completely. I'll then say a bit about the archive for those of you that haven't come across it yet, and what it is and what it aims to do. Next, Merv Davey is going to talk about the Cornish Bagpipe project, exploring the historical images, texts and references that inspired their reconstruction. Then we're going to have Tony to talk about the Tea Treat project, which has been a mammoth undertaking, and these celebrations are shot through with music, from brass bands and other elements. And then Garry is going to talk about the Rescorla Centre's programme of podcasts, which aims to create a collection of different types of Cornish music that can be shared with the public. So what I think the best thing to do is if we have any questions, new people. If we have any questions or comments, we'll have them after each section so that things are fresh on their minds. I'm sure we're all getting Zoom fatigue in these lockdown times. But feel free to bring your question to the end as well, which is fine. So we're hoping to be about 45 minutes to an hour, keeping things fairly short and sweet. But if the discussion's flowing, we can easily keep going, and feel free to stay on. But if you need to leave, go for it without worrying about it. And thanks for joining us. So a couple of housekeeping things. We'll be recording this meeting, which will either go up in full or in part on the Cornish National Music Archive website or the Lowender Peran website. And if you want to type your message, type your question as a message rather than ask it out loud, you can use the chat function to do that, which is at the bottom in the centre of your screen. Which will open a chat window, and you can send messages to the whole group or an individual. But just so that you know, whatever you do send privately gets made public at the end. So I'm sure more of a problem for teachers in classrooms, but just so that you know. So I will let Jane Lofthouse, who we're very pleased to be joining with us, to talk about the Cornish Music Guild. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Kate. Good morning, everybody. So I'm going to speak, as Kate said, about the Cornish Music Guild, or Coethus Ilo Cornuic. The story begins really once upon a time. On 1986, James Sargent, the county librarian and arts advisor, set up a day to celebrate Cornish music in Camborne. And that was the most fantastic event. I was involved in it because I was asked to sing in it. And the music that I sang there were songs that I'd never heard before that were really good. They'd never been performed before. And we had a talk afterwards with all the people that were there. And they thought, this can't stop here. We must go on and do something else. So Paul Smales and myself bounded away thinking, yes, we've got to do something. A guild seemed to be what we wanted. So we got in touch with everybody who'd been at the Tregidga Day event and all the other musicians we knew and people involved and interested in music, Cornish music and culture and so on. And we launched, we had a launch in Truro Museum at the beginning of 1987. And that was the origin, the starts of the Cornish Music Guild. I'll read very briefly what our aims were, because they're in our constitution, or they were, which is the Guild aims to remedy the neglect of Cornish music and to advance education in the field of Cornish music and music associated with Cornwall. It attempts to bring together musicians and those involved in music of widely diverse styles so that they may benefit from each other's musical talents and work together to promote Cornish music and musicians. Without reading the whole lot, it also encourages the use of Cornish language in song. So what do we do to promote those aims? We had a members' handbook, and of course, one of the first things we did was to set up the Cornish Music Archive, which has you'll hear so much more about that later that I barely need to say anything, but books, manuscripts across the whole field. And that thing started pouring in quite quickly there. We also had a newsletter which notified people of any events relating to Cornish music or Cornish culture, which had details about composers or musicians, and also articles. We did quite a lot of articles about Cornish composers. George Lloyd, that was the longest. He said that nobody had ever written so much about him before. So George Lloyd, Inglis Gundry, Philip Cannon, I could go on. Judith Bailey, of course, who's still working in Cornwall now. So those were two of the things. We also set up workshops, a series of workshops. There was one for Cornish music schools, Cornish schools music, choirs, and Sir David Wilcox did that, another staunch Cornishman, sadly not with us now, who ran the King's College Cambridge Choir and the Royal College of Music. So that was a terrific event. We did one for Cornish composers with Ben Luxon, who was our president, incidentally. And also we had annual ones of Cornish youth brass bands, which Gough Richards ran. We did 10 years worth of those. And the great encouragement to get the young musicians to write their own pieces, and they were actually performed in the workshops and the concerts. We also did a series of, salient concerts. One of the first was first performances for many, many years of Thomas Merritt's The Shepherd of Israel, which was that to celebrate the 80 years from his death in 1908. Everybody would know his carols, but this was quite a good event with his cantata, The Shepherd of Israel. We did the first performance with the Cornish Youth Orchestra of George Lloyd's Sixth Symphony. That was to celebrate George Lloyd's 80th birthday. I think it was the first time it had been performed in Cornwall. We also celebrated the routes to Compostela. In 1987, the Council of Europe decided to open up and label and publicise the ancient routes to Santiago de Compostela, the ancient pilgrim routes. Hilary Shaw, people may know her, who set up the Bradera San Diego, was instrumental in that. And we did a fantastic concert, I think anyway, on St. Michael's Mount with compositions specially written to relate to pilgrimage. Merv will remember that because he was there with Cam Canuick and they danced and performed music. And so we had a range, as we said, diverse styles of music. I have to quote Jim Pengelly here. My music is serious. All music is serious. We don't separate the different types. I think I've covered, oh yes, and we also had, we've done tapes. I'm afraid it was tapes in those days, but the Shepherd of Israel is taped. A lot of local, regional carols have been taped. And I think probably I'm getting to the end of the main things that we did. It was a good 20 years worth of it. Oh yes, our last project was actually funded or sponsored by Southwest Arts, and that was a series of concerts with the Duchy Ensemble, where again, predominantly music by Cornish composers. I'd love to pay tribute to all the people who supported us during that time. I've mentioned Paul Smales, terrific person. I do actually have to give credit here. I really must thank Jim Pengelly, who was an absolute rock from the start to the finish, with his good advice and common sense. If anybody knew him, they'd know what Jim was like. Very, very measured and very, very helpful. And finally, of course, my gratitude will go to Garry Tregidga, who was our archive director after Richard McGrady, who was our first one. So Garry, who found a good home for the archive because we'd had great difficulty actually housing it. And then, so to Garry and to Merv for now giving that archive a new lease of life. As I say, you'll hear so much more about the archive that I don't really need to elaborate on it. But I think probably this might be a point at which to hand over to other speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jane. Any questions from everybody to Jane? Or we can talk at the end, but if you have anything burning, now's your chance. Okay. We'll carry on then. So thank you very much, Jane. And the Cornish Music Guild completely underpins the Cornish National Music Archive project, which is a partnership between the Institute of Cornish Studies at Exeter University and Lowender Peran. And it's built on the physical archive of the Guild. And between 2015 and 2016, that collection was moved from what was the Cornish Studies Library into the Cornish Record Office and catalogued by Merv, Tony, Garry and myself with the help of Tamsin Mallet and her team there, who were a great support. And with this done, as music researchers and enthusiasts, we wanted to bring wider attention to these important pieces of Cornish musical history and culture and help grow the collection itself, which was where the idea for the project was born. So the aims of the archive are twofold. Firstly, to encourage the deposit of physical items into the Cornish Music Archive collection at Crescent Kerno, which is where it is now. So we see continuing the work of the Guild as a really important strand of the archive project. So we're trying to ensure that items can be preserved for the use and enjoyment of future generations. And whether there might be a manuscript book sitting at the back of a chapel cabinet that you don't know what to do with, or the archive of a brass band that's taking up space in someone's garage, or perhaps even a personal collection of CDs or records that are unusual related to Cornwall in some way, it's important that these items are looked after for future generations to use and learn from. And this has really quite a personal ring for me because I've had the lucky experience of being able to go into archives looking for Cornish music around the world. And one of the most gratifying experiences I had was in the American Folklife Centre in Washington, DC. And I was going through the letters of a folklorist who was persuading the director of what was the National Folk Song Archive at that point, that he wanted to record the Grass Valley Carol Choir in order to collect this music for the benefit of future scholars. And realizing that I was that future scholar, without their work 70 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to do the research that I did. So I'm incredibly keen that the Cornish National Music Archive project pays this forward and encourages the collection and preservation of Cornish music in all its forms for future musicians, teachers, learners and researchers, perhaps 100 years from now. The second aim is to gather information regarding the collection and make this information available to the public through the website and encourage people to use it as a resource for any research they're doing, and also importantly to add to the website themselves. Oh, we have somebody who's trying to get back in. Hello. The archive can't realistically be definitive because Cornish music is continually evolving. We're constantly finding out new things, and trying to reflect the breadth of music in Cornwall is a big undertaking, and each of the four of us has got our specialisms and interests, but we are completely committed to it being inclusive and broad and reflecting the diverse musical landscape in Cornwall. So defining Cornishness is an age-old challenge. What makes a person or a piece of music Cornish for one person might not be what makes it Cornish for another. And because we're trying to reflect breadth and depth, we've thought about how wide to cast the net of what to include. And it's quite a conundrum. For example, a piece of music written about Cornwall, but not by a Cornish person or in a Cornish place, or to take the opposite example, something written by a Cornish person, but with nothing particularly Cornish about the music. So we've decided overall to cast a wide net and feature music that is or has been popular in Cornwall, impactful, written about, inspired by Cornwall. So this aims to include individuals, traditions and compositions that express, reflect and celebrate Cornwall and its distinctive identity. And in an effort to reflect this diversity, we felt it was hugely important to make the website a platform that anybody is able to contribute to. It's easy to make an account and write an article. You can just head to the contribute section of the website and sign up with your email address. If you have any questions or difficulties, please get in touch and we'll do our best to help. And we've had some fantastic submissions so far about individuals that might have slipped below the radar in other resources, tunes, brass bands, choirs, music projects like the St Ives Song Project. And we're sharing these in the email newsletter and over social media in an effort to encourage more engagement with it. The site's also fully searchable. So if you've got something that you're interested in finding out about and you'd like to see what we've got, you just pop it in the search bar and you'll see what comes up. And if you find that we're missing something that you think should be represented, we'd be delighted if you wrote an article about it. So hopefully that is a fair introduction and overview of what the archive is and hopes to do. It's an evolving project and we all welcome thoughts, comments, feedback and ideas for how to make it useful, accessible for as broad an audience as possible. So I think that's my introduction. Any questions on that point, or again, save them for the end?
Good one in the chat bar.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
Which is something we tried from the beginning.
So 2 questions. Matt B, thank you. Is the archive for Cornish composers only? So hopefully, no. The answer is no, it's not for Cornish composers only. But of course, we would hope to feature them as much as possible in that effort to reflect music on Cornish themes or important to a Cornish community. Then we would include non-Cornish composers, or more accurately, perhaps the music of theirs that is important to Cornwall. Does that make sense? I don't know if any of the others want to chime in on this.
Yeah, I asked the question before you described what the archive was about. The only reason I asked about it was because of Angela Evans's archive.
Okay.
I don't know if you're aware of it. And I don't know what's happened to it. I catalogued some of it about 10 years ago. The only connection to Cornwall really was it was at Pengerstick Castle. It's more about wider early music and the transition to orchestra out of church music and the role of Joseph Haydn and that sort of thing. It's important in its own right, but it's not particularly relating to Cornwall.
That's one of those tricky situations then, isn't it, where location-wise it's got the relevance. Is it catalogued at Crescent Kerno?
No, I catalogued part of it, about 20 boxes, but there's like thousands of records, CDs, and we didn't even start on those. There's a whole card index of court book, and Angela features in books on music as an incipit collector.
Okay, well, that sounds incredible. It is an interesting thing with how to sort of, because featuring things in the National Music Archive, there's the website and then there's the collection at Crescent Kerno, and we can't, you know, there are plenty of pieces of music that are, or items that are already in Crescent Kerno that can't be moved into the collection because that's not how they do things. But hopefully the website is where, say, you could write an article about something that can't be within the physical archive itself, so that it's there as a reference point for anybody that might be looking for information on that kind of thing. Does that help? Thanks, Matt.
I think it's fair to say that really it's we try to be inclusive, and it's if there is a connection in any way to Cornwall, albeit by the name, composer, by the music, by the performers, whatever, then we've tried to include it. It is a difficult thing to be judgmental over, and you know, so we've gone for the inclusive route, so to get as much in there as possible.
Point is that it's very easy on the archive to do a short article. So okay, it's not core to Cornish music, but it's a bit about Cornish history, like as this person obviously is. A short article on the website makes it available to people, and then they'll know where to find it. So in a sense, it's also quite a good device for signposting things.
We've had another question from Andrew Bolton, who's asking, above and beyond research, as much of the music is out of print, are you planning to digitise the music itself so that it can be performed? And the answer to that, I think, is broadly yes, but I think that depending on where the music is, whether it's in the Guild collection already at Crescent Kerno, or whether it's something, say, that, for example, Merv's been adding tunes to the site where he's sort of in charge of whether they can be, the music itself can be digitised and added to the website. It's a sort of a case-by-case thing, but hopefully, yes, that there would be as much music as possible to help people engage with it on the site. Is that right, Merv?
I think we're always conscious there of copyright, and copyright is a great thing, but it's also a barrier to including some things. So we do work very hard to keep on the right side of the law there. But our intention is to get it in there if we possibly can.
Yes, that's right. I mean, it's slightly easier for me because a lot of material I'm interested in is trad, and there's no copyright, so you go straight up on the website. When it's copyright, then we've got to get the permissions and so on. But you know, yes, we can make it available, and if for any reason there's a copyright problem, then we can signpost where it is.
Great. Well, that's good to know. Thank you, because it's. Obviously the history is interesting in its own right, but you know, that if there's great music there that the wider audience are not getting to hear, you know, I'm just wondering what can be done to bring it to a wider public, you know. As the issue of copyright has come up, it just occurred to me, many of us have been wondering ever since Dick Gendel died, you know, hoping that finally we could get his music published. I don't know, is anyone in negotiation with his heirs to see if anything could be done? Because you know, a lot of us love his songs, but okay, you can pick them up by listening to recordings and so on, but it would be great if the notes were there available for people who wanted to learn them.
Well, I know of the archive, and well, I'm sure all of us are, but I haven't personally made any approach. I don't have a direct connection, so I wouldn't really know where to start with that, but one of the others might do.
Well, I'm just going to say that as an example, I mean, not answering your question directly, but I'm certainly in touch with Adrian Self, and have got permission to include stuff from Geoffrey Self. I'm in touch with George Lloyd's family, so we've got some of George Lloyd's music there. Malcolm Arnold, certainly, as well as a lot of Cornish composers as well. So we are endeavouring to get round to it, shall I say, but some things are going to take a bit longer than others. But any pointers you can give us, any help you can give us in where to go for these things, because some of them, I mean, there's one particular one I'm trying to get at the moment, and I just cannot trace his family at all. So any pointers would be gratefully received.
I think the thing with Dick's material is a lot of it was copyright through Sentinel, and it's a bit muddy water because Sentinel is no longer around, but his stuff is actually on PRS. And we pay a PRS license, so we're able to put his material up online. But in terms of getting the whole package together, that really is up to his estate and his family. But in theory, because he registered with PRS as well as going through Sentinel, and we have membership of PRS, then we're able to put his stuff up, which is quite good. But in a sense, it's up to people to give it to us to put up.
I mean, just adding on to that, of course, we have got PRS license, but we also have to get performers' rights license from whoever's playing it. And if it's on a CD, then we have to go down the torturous route of trying to get permission from the label holders, which is probably the most difficult of the three aspects.
You will see that we've had a very interesting 6 months exploring all this.
You know a lot more now than we did then, and we still only know half of it.
Daniel Woodfield, thanks Daniel. We have a suggestion for a transcription project for someone to take up. That would be a fantastic project and so useful for Cornish language as well as Cornish music. So I totally agree with you there. Matt notes that Jan Gendel needs to give permission. So an ongoing project, I would think. I'm conscious of the time because not trying to rush us through this because I'm really enjoying the discussion, but I feel like that we should probably move over to Merv. I think I said was going to go next. Is that right?
To be honest, we've covered a lot of what I was hoping to illustrate. We've been doing now, which was the whole point. But just to quickly sort of have an overview, the advantage of the archive being presented in a website format is it's a very good way of getting across topics like the Cornish Bagpipes, because you've got a series of quite different themes going through. Obviously, there's a bit about early music in Cornwall, which is a very clear structure within itself. You've got the kind of very esoteric bits about bagpipe structures and drones and bits of wax and tape that keep it all going and so on, which will keep many bagpipers very happy talking about for hours and leaves everybody else completely cold. But on a website, you can drop it in there. This is the beauty of it. And you can look at it if you want to, or you can just gloss over it. The other thing, of course, with the Bagpipe project was exploring Cornish tunes to use. And again, this is where the website comes into its own, because you can, to be honest, I rushed over the weekend putting various articles up about the bagpipes. And as I was doing it, yes, I can remember Radu recording that. I can link them in. I can remember Dalla doing that. I'll link them into this. And the point is really, in terms of curation, it's like a web. You have your core story you're talking about, but you can lead people off to listen to a tune here, see an academic paper there. Mike O'Connor's done a lot of fairly good research work behind the Cornish bagpipes and early music culture. And it's a fantastic backdrop to have. So you can read an article, you can link to it, or you can say, oh yeah, I accept that, that's fine. And I'm more interested in the music or the philosophy. My interest in the bagpipes was a kind of postmodern philosophy, which actually drifts off piste a little bit when it comes to the music archive. But again, it comes back again, because by exploring the issues around the bagpipes and Celtic identity, you actually come back to some of the issues that we started out talking about, is what is Cornish music? What makes it Cornish music? And what's the background? I'm going to, by way of light entertainment, I'll see if I can share the screen. Nope, I can't do that.
Oh.
Or can you help me share the screen?
If you make me a host, you'll be able to do it.
Yeah, I'll make him the host. Oh, hang on a sec. More. Oh, the list is jumping around, and so I'm about to make somebody else the host that doesn't want to be. There you go, Merv. You should be able to now. Is that there? Has it done that?
Well, it's jumping around doing all sorts of things.
Wow.
At the moment, I've lost you completely.
That's all right, we can see your screen.
Can you see my screen? Can you see the images of bagpipes?
Yep.
I can see the Cornish Music Guild bagpipe there.
There we go. Well, it's just by way of, that's right, but by way of illustration, we have a kind of descending order of reality here. The Orthonon bagpipes are the ones that our bagpipe makers use for modelling. You can see quite detailed finger holes there and so on. And they, interestingly enough, have become the Cornish bagpipe for the reenactors and medieval bagpipe players. There was a couple of sets modelled on those some 20 years ago now. And since then, they've gone into manufacture. There's been about 200 spread around the world. And now when the term Cornish bagpipe tends to mean a double-chanted bagpipe, like the one that's shown in the bench end here. It's interesting actually, Gordon, because we've got a couple of other images of double-chanted bagpipes. One is the Davey style one, which you can see here, and one is the one at St Austell, which is a gargoyle, but it's quite lifelike for a gargoyle. Then we descend into pig's playing bagpipes and a dog or maybe a monkey playing a bagpipe, which really is its medieval iconography. Sadly, the one at Lansing is very faded now, but again, the interesting thing there is it connects up with real people. And that's really the point about perhaps the Lansing and the Orthonon pipes is that you know they relate to real people, you know they relate to culture that was going on in Cornwall at the time. So as you can see, it's very easy to sort of shoot off in different directions with the website and see these different things. And if you explore, again, you can look at images, you can hear some of the music. And I find it a very exciting medium because I can get ideas across very, very quickly. And that's the beauty of this format for a music archive. I haven't put them up yet, but I've also got arrangements for you were asking about having scores up there. I've got arrangements for bagpipes that have been done over the years, which I will put up eventually. So it's a fascinating medium for communicating about Cornish history, Cornish culture around music. There we are, that's my little spiel. Now I'm going to try and get rid of myself now. How do I do that?
If you go to the bottom of your screen, it should probably say stop share, or maybe at the top.
Stop, well, yes, stop share, there we are.
There we go.
I'm sorry, I think it's a steep learning curve for us all, isn't it? There we are.
That's
fantastic.
Any questions for Merv? I mean, I had a question. I wondered if you'd kind of had any sort of thoughts or input from pipers from other traditions, say, you know, Scots is the obvious one, but what's the reaction to Cornish bagpipes like?
Oh, it's a very geek world out there for bagpipes. The minute you arrive at a set of bagpipes, well, how does that work? What kind of drones do you use? And there's a camaraderie amongst pipers, which is quite, I say unique, it probably isn't unique, but it feels unique. And it's very, very easy to get help. When I've had difficulty with reeds and that, other pipers will do, oh, try this, try that. Use a bit of sellotape over the hole there, that might make it work. And the camaraderie is quite nice, actually.
Lovely. We've had a typed question from Matt asking, why do Cornish pipers play more Gallivian pipes?
Only one Cornish piper plays more Lithium Pipes. That's Will. No, I've got Lithium Pipes as well. Lithium Pipes are very easy to play. They're played like a tin whistle, and they're a very, you know, they are very neat. I've got a set that Will and I play together. But the catch is that they're not very powerful, and this has been part of the problem. Is that we had a lot of success in reconstructing the pipes, but when you've got a gig out on the dunes in Perranporth in the mizzle, the pouring rain, what you don't use is a very, very expensive, delicate set of reconstructed medieval pipes. what you use is a butch pair of pipes that you put together from a mixture of Breton booze. And in fact, I've had to make my own pipes, which I call the Booker pipes, which are a combination of Breton booze, which is the chanter, and Highland pipes. The truth be told, in a way, it's a bit disappointing. We hope to sort of revive the Cornish pipes, have everybody playing them. But there's a kind of force there which says, well, you know, if you want to play pipes in these situations, you want to play a longer scale of Cornish pipes. The double chanter is very finite. There's only a certain number of notes you can play on there. And I find that I really do need to play bigger pipes for what I'm using them for. Interestingly enough, that is much the culture elsewhere, in both Scotland and in Brittany, where you've got strong bagpipe cultures. There's no longer a domination by one kind of pipe. In Scotland, a lot of people are playing what they call folk pipes now. Not the pipe bands, but the folk bands and that. And they are slightly smaller versions of the Highland pipe or border pipes. Likewise, in Brittany, 20 years ago, they emulated the Scots with their great big Highland pipes. Now the Bretons play a lot more of their own bagpipes. They play the booze and the beano and so on with their bagado. That's the pipe bands. So in a sense, in the 21st century, there isn't the drive to have one single bagpipe that we had envisaged in 1988 when the project was started. But practicalities bear. But as I say, just at the moment, I think there are more Great Highland bagpipe, Scottish bagpipe players than there are guys at the moment. I'm sure that will change at some stage.
Thanks, Merv. That's lovely.
Kate, could I just ask Merv? Having seen the pictures, I mean, I was familiar with the Alton picture of carving of the piper, but I was struck by the one from Davidstow that the chanter seemed much shorter. So, you know, why, you know, originally was the presumption that the one with the longer charters was a more authentic Cornish one, or you know, are they both authentically Cornish? It's just that you thought you'd get a better sound out of that, or?
I think it was just the alternate ones. You can actually see the holes that for the finger holes, and they're not so easily visible on the Davidstow ones. I don't think in the 16th century, when these pipes were around, that any of them were exactly the same. You made them up as you fancied them at the time. I think the idea of a Cornish bagpipe or a Scottish bagpipe or an Irish bagpipe really came in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Before that time, there were folk bagpipes. So they wouldn't have conformed. If this makes a good sound, we run with it. That's the way they worked. The thing with is that the Davidstow pipes, the Alton pipes, you can see them very clearly and they look playable. But the ones at Davidstow, the doubles chanted the same length, there has been a set made like them by Clive Palmer. I've got a set tucked away this summer, but they don't work quite so well as the Alton ones.
All right. Thank you very much. I think we've covered all the questions in the chat for a minute. So, Tony, could you carry on with your discussion of the Tea Tree project? That would be lovely.
Yep. Okay. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, the Tea Tree project is one of a number of projects that we're dealing with in the archive, and it makes its way into there really because of the musical content. And so many events and festivals in Cornwall have got music associated with them. And that's our reason for including them, really. And the tea treat, well, what better? Because that's really part of our Cornish heritage. And those of a certain age will recall, no doubt, the events, the traditional Sunday school tea treat taking place in the chapel or Sunday school yard or in an adjacent field. Or maybe it was to jump on a bus and go to one of our favourite beaches and spend the day there. So, and that sort of changed over time as well, which we've tried to sort of bring out in the history of the tea tree. And what we've assembled so far, and is actually already on the archive, is contributions from individuals and organisations of their memories of the tea treats, of their photographs, and what went on there, what games they played and so forth. And I mean, the individuals who contributed are really too many to mention, but I've got to mention one organisation, because I have had a lot of help, or sorry, we've had a lot of help from the Federation of Old Cornwall Societies. The members have really come up trumps, and daily I've been getting sort of photographs and stories of what went on in their particular area. So thank you to them. So that's all up there. There's lots and lots of photographs up there of Sunday schools around Cornwall, how they celebrated them, and photographs of the individuals involved, and they go back to 1900 and a few earlier, I think, as well. Be interesting if you have a look, actually, if you go in and just tap on in tea treats to see if the chapels or the churches in your particular area are included. Obviously, we've put in what we've received and what we've been able to research, but there are many others, and we're forever looking for others that we haven't yet included. So if yours isn't there, it means that we haven't found it, in which case we'd love to receive it. The bit that's not there at the moment, and we can call this work in progress, if you like, is the actual tea treat day. And it's the most interesting aspect of the whole exercise, really. What went on the actual tea treat day? Now, my memories go back to when I was I attended a Sunday school, in a Methodist Sunday school. So my memories go back quite a way as an attendee, but also my particular specialism, if you like, within the archive is brass bands, my passion. And I played at many tea treats with a brass band. Excuse me. So I've got quite a few memories, if you like, of what went on. And we've tried to map out the typical day at the traditional tea treat, not the trip to the seaside, but the one that was held in the field adjacent to the chapel. And one thing I've realized as I grew up was the amount of preparation that went into this. I mean, it was, after all, probably the biggest day on the village calendar. Everything stopped for it, and they were huge events. And the preparation work, mostly, I suppose, looking back by the ladies, preparing the food and so forth. Isn't that always the case? But the preparation was considerable, and even on the day, you had to find somebody to boil the tea or boil the water for the tea, so you could all have a cup of tea, and it was all part of it. And then, of course, the procession. Now, the procession was always, right from day one, a big part of the tea treat. And in my particular case, we seemed to march for miles, playing to the hedgerows, with very few people listening, and probably the only thing was the odd cow would poke its head above the hedge to see which band had been booked that year. So so really houses were few and far between. Other villages, more populated, heavily populated, of course there were a lot more people there. The music, and I'll come on to that in just a minute, but the music was a major part of the celebration, and they were celebrations. Excuse me. The sports and the games, what it's brought out, all the responses, is the number of games that were real traditional Cornish games that were played at these. Incidentally, most of them seem to involve kissing someone, the kissing ring and so forth. So perhaps the prize in the case of the game, most of the games at least, was getting a kiss from the girl that you quite fancied. Not that I remember that very well. And of course the tea, the fantastic tea, which has got all sorts of things, you know, the jam and cream splits and so forth, all laid out. A lot of work, a lot of stuff to buy, a lot of stuff to make, but this pristine white tablecloths with the ladies there in their pinnies, all serving this food to all the people, including the band. So we always appreciated this. And I remember one event where we always had a good tea as a bandsman. One event we went to, and I won't say where it was, but we were given a half a pasty and a cup of tea. We made sure the following year we didn't go there. And that was what it was all about. No matter what they were paying us, if they couldn't give us a decent tea, we weren't going. And of course, part of that, slightly different, but the famous tea treat buns. The kids, we kids always enjoyed our tea treat buns. Now, it would be nice to know, it'd be good to know when that tradition started. We can trace it back to sort of the 1860s. Why saffron? Why tea treat buns? I don't know. It would be interesting to find that out. We'll never know when the first one was made and served, I suppose, but you know, it's a fascinating subject. And even when they resorted to going to the beach for their day out, they still have the tea treat buns. The evening concert when the band would play, and of course many chapels and Sunday schools finished up with a serpentine walk, but not everywhere we find. Some areas didn't know what we were talking about when we mentioned the serpentine walk. Just a quick word on the tea treat music. We set out to try and find sort of typical music we played at a tea treat, and there's nothing actually named as tea treat music, but we asked around a lot of people who we thought would know, and there is a lot of music we found from the sort of mid to late 1800s that we could fairly say was tea treat music, if you like, not named as such, but was used. It was in the early days played by traditional musicians, getting people together. Garry and Merv, had they been around at that time, no doubt they would have been taking part in it. But of course, as we move on and we move on to the latter half of the 19th century, we're turning then to the brass bands, and it's become, certainly in living memory now, it's an event that brass bands attended, and we actually have taken some of the music from the late 1800s, which we feel was probably originally, or maybe not originally, but probably at that time played by brass bands. And we've had it arranged for brass bands. Hannah Hawken from St Austell has taken 5 pieces now, and she's arranged it for brass bands. And we are going to record them and put them on the website. Now, St Austell Band are doing this, St Austell Town Band are doing this for us. Because of the COVID restrictions, we have a problem. It would have been so simple to go to the practice room and get a little recorder and record them. But because of COVID, it is a difficulty, and we've managed to get some funding from Feast, backed up by Cornwall Council and the Arts Council, to actually record them individually in people's homes, and then by some magic means, with a magic wand, bring it all together as a presentation, all done digitally, so it will sound as though they're all performing at the same time. I don't know how it's done, but you know, we're grateful to receive that money from Feast to be able to get that done. The most difficult part, I suppose, being the actual IT work. So that's just one of the projects we're doing. We're doing a number of other projects, and they are great fun. And we do feel that there's good participation from many people around Cornwall. And for what they are, watch this space. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Had a couple of questions. Helen Scott, I didn't catch the name of this project. This is, I think we've just called it the Tea Treat Project. We haven't been hugely outrageous in our selection of project name there. And Andrew's noted, just found a lovely picture of Bethel Tea Treat on the site. Hooray! Great bit of heritage. Thanks for putting this up. And a note that Cedric Appleby was my Cornish studies teacher back in the day.
Cedric Appleby, I ought to mention Cedric, because Cedric is one of those that has helped a lot. There's many others, but Cedric certainly has been very generous in his contribution.
Any more questions for Tony? That's a moment of silence. So I think our last speaker then is Garry Tregidga. If you wouldn't mind talking to us about the Rescorla podcast project, that would be marvellous.
And my short talk today is about how the Rescorla Centre is now working closely with the Cornish National Music Archive in the dissemination and promotion of its musical activities. In the first place, it might be useful to say something about Rescorla itself. 2001, the former Methodist chapel in this small village was closed. Sadly, like so many throughout Cornwall, it was the only public space in the immediate area, and was decided to give it a new lease of life by developing the building as a centre for the promotion of Cornish culture. Situated on the edge of Clay Country, just a few miles from St Austell, it was natural to celebrate the local history, literature and traditions of the area. An annual festival was then established in 2008 based on Snail Creek. As some of you may probably already know about Snail Creek, but basically it's a processional dance set in the late 19th century that had an ancient pedigree that had once been popular in Rescorla and also many of the neighbouring clay villages, places like Roach and Bugle. In addition, alongside history talks, walks and film shows was a monthly event combining local food with Cornish music and poetry. New groups emerged such as Rescorla Accordions and Canna Rescorla to promote singing with a particular emphasis on Cornish and Celtic music. But as in so many cases, the impact of COVID and the subsequent lockdown undermined the vitality of the centre. In recent months, the strategy instead has been on meeting this challenge by the creation of small groups, dedicated, for example, to the practical study of history, reading Cornish novels, for example, 2 reading groups set up in the past few weeks by our education officer, Tracy Fiffy, thereby providing a communal service and at the same time celebrating Cornish culture. But not surprisingly, music is featured prominently with the aim of developing a long-term programme of podcasts. The acoustics of this former chapel provide an ideal setting for individuals and small groups to record performances, and this music can then be shared with the wider public through digital platforms like the Cornish National Music Archive and Rescorla Centre's own Facebook page and website. In recent weeks, we've started to capture Cornish music, both old and new. A good example are some of the Tea Treat tunes that we've just heard about from Tony. 5 performers, Merv Davey on banjo, Chris Bartram on fiddle, Nigel Nethersole on mandolin, Graham Kemp of drums for fun, myself on the piano accordion, have performed and recorded Tea Treat classics like One and All, Sick Kevin, and our own Snail Creek, which we were fortunate enough to be able to have recorded just about a year or so prior to the start of the Snail Creek Rescorla festivals. Others are planned for the future. The idea then is to look at other Cornish tunes and types of music with a particular focus on those pieces that don't tend to be regularly performed. One such example is Trelawney. Now that might seem a surprising statement given its popularity, but I'm not thinking of the conventional tune. Louisa Clare wrote a tune that the Reverend Orca thought was more appropriate, for example. Then in the 1880s, G.B. Millett of Penzance produced another version before Joseph Smith in the early 1900s wrote yet another tune that for a brief period in the years leading up to the First World War was said to be actually more popular than the tune we use today. Indeed, Smith's version was actually the winning entry in a competition organised by the London Cornish Association that attracted 30 new submissions for a tune to accompany Orca's famous ballad. Indeed, if anybody knows of any of those other tunes that have survived, we would like to hear from you, since they could be recorded at Rescorla and obviously provide useful archive material for the CNMA itself, building up quite a nice resource, nice collection there on those on Cornish national anthems. Now, this has just been a brief introduction to the cultural work of Rescorla and our new association with the archive. We would very much like to hear from any musicians who would like to join us. In recent weeks, we've been able to record enough music and stories to establish our initial series of podcasts for what we are calling Radio Rescorla. And after the impending second lockdown, we hope to initiate new and additional music projects. Part of the appeal of the Cornish National Music Archive for me is that it links archiving to a proactive commitment to recording music and initiating new studies of composers and performers to benefit Cornish culture. I will now pass you back to Kate.
Thanks, Garry. Could you just say the name of the project podcast again? I think we had someone miss it.
Okay, we're calling it Radio Rescorla, R-A-D-Y-O Rescorla.
Lovely, thank you very much. Any questions for Garry? We've got a bit of buzzing on the line, but I can still hear you. So if there are any questions, go for it. Well, I had a quick question. I was wondering if you had any recordings lined up for what, well, presumably either mid-December or whenever we come out of this next lockdown, unless you managed to get them in before Thursday.
A session yesterday, actually, and we discussed the idea of actually doing Christmas carols. Obviously, we're a little bit unsure what's going to happen. The aim now for the next few weeks, perhaps, is to have them recorded in each other's homes. And Chris Bartram, who's our sort of like recording expert, he's going to then try to put them all together and put together different tracks. He's actually going to play the double bass and the fiddle as well, and do some of his own pieces. But I'm going to do some stuff on the accordion and send them to him, and he's going to actually put them all together. This is the plan. So yeah, we are definitely going to do some Cornish Christmas carols, including one or two local ones, like for example the Lowender carol as well.
Ah, fantastic. A question from Helen: how would you go about taking part as a musician?
Well, obviously we've got an immediate problem there. We've had to suspend for the next few weeks our activities. We had Rescorla accordions next Saturday morning and another session in the afternoon. That's all been suspended. But simply just email me, get in contact obviously with CNMA. We've got a Facebook site, Rescorla Centre. So if you'd like to join that, Helen, you know, more than welcome. That will put you in contact with me directly and also with the group.
Thanks, Garry. That's great. I was involved with the Lowender Peran virtual banjo jam last night, which was great fun. So, and Merv, I think you might have been there. Yeah.
Have you muted? Yeah. Hold on.
So
yes, I was there amongst nearly 40 others. Yes.
I know, it was great, wasn't it?
Well, it shows what can be done if you grasp the mettle of what we can do in these current times.
Well, I've posted to John Dowling to see if he'll keep it going. We could do a virtual banjo jam, maybe. You know.
There we are. That's the way to do it.
Yeah. Sorry, I'll shut up now. I'll be in touch, Garry. Thank you.
As I said, we're looking for musicians, all different types of instruments, and I think that's really what's good about it. We started off as Rescorla accordions. We're still doing the Rescorla accordions, but we've got fiddle players, banjo players. As I said, we've even got drums for fun joining us as well. So we've got a percussion side. So yeah, more than welcome.
Question from Andrew Bolton, Garry. Where can we access the Rescorla podcasts?
Well, we are planning to, in December, we've got an existing website set up, and that's going to be developed actually over the next month. Some of them are actually going to go up on our Facebook site, Rescorla Centre, but again, we're going to share them with CNMA so that they would be able to be accessed via the archive.
Lovely. Any more questions for Garry? Or any more questions at all? I mean, we've now moved through all of our speakers, but if there's points you've thought of since, or comments or discussion you wanted to have, now's the time. We're coming up to the hour, but I'm happy to stay on if there's questions or discussion to be had.
I've got a question.
Hi.
Well, first of all, I just kind of want to say thank you to the people who put this together. I've recently started a master's in ethnomusicology, so I'm going to hopefully be finding this a really interesting place to find and access my research. So as Kate was saying earlier, thanks for Forward Scholars for putting all this together. A point that kind of all of you individually have slightly touched on is this idea of music's incorporation into the further Cornish culture and like its surroundings. And I was wondering, and having a quick look at the website, how are you going to incorporate this idea of like music with tea treats, or music specifically for bagpipes, or maybe for choirs, and how it extends further? I know we've got Jaldi on the video as well, who will probably be interested in the dance aspect. Like, how are we looking at this idea of a musical archive and its expansion through culture? Not necessarily directed to anybody, that question.
Well, I suppose if I could pick up on the projects, I mean, certainly as far as the Tea Tree project is concerned, all the music we collect, that Garry and Merv are involved in, the brass band recordings and so forth, will appear on the website under the heading of T-Treat Project. We're doing another one on Tregidga Day, and we've already discovered some additional music by Geoffrey Self for music of that particular day. We're doing a project into Cornish hymns, or at least hymns that are attributed Cornish place names. There are so many, and we've found so far 70 or 80 of place names that have been used as titles for Cornish hymn tunes. Now, we will try and include, copyright permitting, as many of the music, as much of the music as we can, maybe some organists playing the music, certainly the titles and their history and so forth. So we're trying to put as much as we can on the website of actually live music, streamed music, and where we can, sheet music or manuscript, to try and encourage people. And certainly as far as the brass band recordings for the T-Treats are concerned, the actual sheet music will appear there as well, so other bands can play that. So we're trying to spread the word through that. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but that's some of the things we're trying to do.
If I can just add a little bit to that, we found that we needed to put a category on the website of events, because I've yet to find a Cornish event that hasn't got music associated with it. And I'm looking at Matt here now, because I'm chasing up a song that Matt found about the crime. Was it Crying the Net, Mac, or was it? No, it was Midsummer. That's right. There is a singing and dancing has always been associated with Midsummer customs, and B, there have been several songs written for that particular event. So, you know, we need on the archive to have a page on the Midsummer customs, and from there link some of the songs and that are about it. Even the song Cullum Hurling has a tune associated with it. So in a sense that, you know, on the website events, we hope to capture all the events, all the traditional events in Cornwall and others that had music associated with them.
And are coming back as well. So last year at the Callington Crying the Neck, I saw Carmen, who's here, hello, dance Cock in Breeches. Now the Federation of Old Cornwall Societies Crying the Neck ceremony, as written by Nance, doesn't actually include music and dance, but Carmen danced Cock in Breeches at Callington, and I know that I've seen it dance now with the Cornish Culture Association down at the Yacht Inn at their Crying the Neck, and they've made the obvious connection between Cock in Breeches, the Cornish harvest dance, and the Crying the Neck ceremony. And it's one that the Red Druth Old Cornwall Society has picked up. So similar to that, yes, Transcription has had interesting history. And when we had to do a Transcription in partnership with the Federation of Old Cornwall Societies this midsummer, we commissioned a new piece funded by Cornwall Council, a new rendition, if you like, of a translation by Philip Knight of the traditional Transcription. So, and that put, you know, that's kind of come full circle. So that's back in Cornish. We don't know that the song collected in the 19th century may never have been in Cornish, but, you know, it was performed as a three-man song, which is another neglected Cornish music custom as well.
Does that help, Daniel? I mean, I'm delighted that there's another up-and-coming ethnomusicologist working on Cornish music, so hooray. Have you got any idea what you're going to be sort of focusing on yet?
That's partly why I'm asking questions. I need to do a field work. In reality, I'll be very bluntly honest. I need to do a small field research project by January. So I'm currently scouting some different options.
Well, I mean, you are a bit stuck this year, unfortunately, aren't you, with all the restrictions and things? I mean, I was just thinking back that it's 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I was doing exactly what you're doing on my ethnomusicology masters. I had to go away and do a little field research project over Christmas, and it was about the Padstow carols. And now I'm here, having finished my PhD on the carols. Well, I hope that the archive will be useful for you and your kind of work to sort of unpick the cultural work that music does in Cornwall. We'll maybe end up on it one day. That would be wonderful.
One of the specific points that interests me, and I guess my next question is whether there's scope for this, is as an archive, obviously you're looking into historical elements, but you know, music as culture is still alive and thriving and even growing in Cornwall, and that's amazing. And that's is there scope for this idea of an archive to actually be utilized as a current promotion and a current letting know of what is going on in Cornwall, and how, like what Matt was just saying about this song, of would it be scope to be going and pointing people towards these festivities or these things that are going on as a broader perspective of, oh, this has been going on in the past and now this is what's happening here, go and see it for yourself.
Well,
I would jump straight in there and say that the whole thing about the archive is that it's a living document, and that what is going on now is as important, and sometimes perhaps even more important than what went on in the past. That's what's different about this kind of curation. It is not just about what happened in the 19th century, it's how the 19th century has informed what we're doing now. So really, you know, I would, far from just about being about the past, I would like to see the archive being about the present and the future.
I mean, we've had an example about that brought up by somebody who was inquiring about one of the tunes we've got up on the site that Merv put up, because there's been bits added to it since Merv's version of it was published. And Merv's response was, well, essentially it was bait. Like, what we would like is people to contribute and add what's happened since and kind of show that ongoing development. So yes, I think Merv's right to say the idea is that it's a living document. I
think some of the events are traditional. I mean, like Tregidga Day and the floor dance, which are two projects we're involved in. So there's continuity and going into the future there. But there's also sort of things on current bands and current players. We're doing something on, you may have heard of the Aggie Boys, who represented Cornwall in Ireland a while ago. So we're doing something in conjunction with them. So there'll be their music on there, their story. They're very much current and future. So I think there is a limitation on time as far as the individuals are concerned, and that's why we would like other people to contribute as well, because you know, we've spent an enormous amount of time getting to where we are, and we'd like some help. So if there's anybody that feels they can contribute in that way, then please do, and it will grow into what people want because of the contributions.
May I speak? Just to say that from its very inception, the archive has been a living document. You know, compositions have gone straight into it when they've been written. A lot of the stuff that Mervyn did went straight in. You know, so I think it always should remain a living document to keep putting into it what's being done now. Yeah, so then it can be used, it can be copied, or printed, preserved, in whatever way, but used. Yeah, I think that's really it. Although I did want to say that there are some dramas in there. You were talking, Daniel, about the wider culture. And of course, anything that's in words sort of goes beyond the tune, doesn't it? You know, whether it's a Cornish legend or a bit of history or something, a festivity that's happening now. So I think it should still go on taking things like that into it. A drama which has got music attached to it, maybe. But it's, you know, there's several in there already from my memory. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Any more discussion points? Yes, Matt.
Are you in contact with Wren Music Archive and Killerton House?
Sorry, I
Because
didn't catch the first one of that.
Wren Music Archive and Killerton House, I believe Baring Gould's original notes collection, fieldwork notes, are at Killerton House.
Merv.
I say in contact with Killerton House, and that quite a lot of that. I spent a lot of time up there when I was doing my PhD. We've not been in contact with them recently, but we know they're there, and it's Baring Gould's notes are quite interesting. Just as a kind of stir of the pot a little bit. What people don't realise is that the area that Baring Gould collected in was entirely populated by Cornish miners a generation before he collected. So although he's ostensibly Dartmoor and South Devon, the people he collected from were a generation after the greater Cornish migrations in the middle of the early part of the 1840s. So that actually Baring Gould's manuscript is more Cornish than people will admit. So it's a very good point, Matt. It's accessible. I did quite a lot of cataloguing of that in terms of what was Cornish, what connected with Cornwall when I did my PhD. Quite a lot of it is actually available through the EFDSS site, but not all of it. For some reason, they haven't got everything on there. I thought they were going to have, but there are still notebooks that are not with the EFDSS. But I say we're in contact with them, but we know where they are.
Lovely. Any more for any more? Daniel.
Is there a plan looking forward as to how the archive is going to start engaging with education of young Cornish people and how it might develop their own personal knowledge? Just from my own experience of growing up in Cornwall, didn't really know I was Cornish until I left. And that's definitely something I can see as being an amazing inspiration to young Cornish musicians.
Well, given that we sort of started, this project sort of started in sort of 2015, 16, and then you put this website project into real motion in about February, and then everything's changed. So our plans as we had have changed even the second we made them, pretty much. But it has been something that I've wanted to do for a long time, and I think that there would be a wonderful opportunity for collaboration with Cornwall Music Service Trust, or creating some resources for their teachers, because they're going into schools and teaching music. And having been a Cornwall Music Service Trust teacher briefly, I would have loved some resources to introduce to young people, because I had a fairly similar experience to you. I remember coming to Lowender Peran when I was quite small, but yeah, it took me going away probably to have a serious think about where I was from. So it would be lovely to bring that into schools in Cornwall and not wait until maybe people have left to go to university. I don't know what anyone else thinks.
I think it will be important that we can connect up and look at ways, what we can put on the website that would be accessible to young people. Yes.
I think it's the how, I suppose, we haven't got around to thinking about yet. I mean, yes, as an ideal, we would say 100% yes, but exactly how we do that with everything else that's happening at the moment, we probably haven't bottomed out, but certainly it's something we should give attention to.
The council's got a project to create a Cornish curriculum for schools, and really that's meant to be a framework that things like this, you can create resources and everything. So if you're a teacher, you can actually select which parts of the curriculum you want to deliver with a Cornish flavour. Ideally everything, but it depends on the teachers in the school. So that should, the draft framework should be coming out in January, and I'm really interested in how you link projects like what you've set up with that to really make sure that happens.
Oh, fantastic. Well, if there's a way that we can contribute or be involved somehow, well, I guess we'll see the framework in January. Fantastic, thanks. Well, I feel that this quiet silence means that we're naturally drawing to a close. So thank you to everybody who's spoken and contributed and attended. If you have any questions that you think of after this, then feel free to drop any of us an email. There's an email on the website. And I hope you enjoy the rest of Lowender Peran. Merv, what have you got on for the rest of the day?
Well, we've got a revisit of our Meet the Dancers at the Dance Spectacular, because we got halfway there last night and suddenly we were let down by a broadband, so that's going out again tonight. And then later on we've got Singing for Dancing, which actually features the web page that we've got on Singing for Dancing, Canna Rag Canna, on our website. So later on this evening there'll be a pointer back towards the National Music Archive website and our page on Singing for Dancing.
Lovely. Well, that sounds fantastic. Thanks everybody for your attendance and all your amazing contributions. I've really enjoyed it, and I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting unless anyone's got anything else to say.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Miranda.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.